those are called cullens with a K. It's a German word. And those cullens break the suction of the vegetables with your knife, and they won't stick to your business. So if you have one of those knives with cullens in it, that's a good knife for this job because they are really sticking. And this guy doesn't want to stand up much anymore. I'll get a few more slices out of him. And then I'm just going to turn him on his side and slice him up. Now, those little oddball pieces, I'm not going to have them on the top of this thing. They're going to be buried inside, and nobody's ever going to see those oddball little pieces, okay? Now, I have these potatoes that I'm going to blend with these potatoes, but these are in water. And I put the potatoes in water for a reason here, because if I don't put the potatoes in water, they start to oxidize and turn brown. You can even see that water is turning a little bit brown in there, okay? That's just potato starch that's oxidizing. So I want to pour off this water. I don't particularly want my potatoes in water. I only do that if I'm not using them right away. And so I probably have more potato here than I need. Let me put that where you can see it. And these guys are a little easier to pick up with a knife blade, I'll tell you. And there we go. Everything's off my board. I'm going to wipe it on down. I don't like that potato starch on there. And I also want to just try and drain these guys one more time. I'm not looking for a bunch of water in my potatoes, okay? So they're sitting right there. Boom. And I have other potatoes over here to talk about. Once this casserole goes in, we're going to talk about potato cookery because we haven't even begun to throw down. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I am turning my camera back over here, and I'm going to build my casserole right here. Boom. Okay. I don't like to put pans on my board. I had it on there before, and it really bugs me, so I took that off there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my potatoes, actually, and I'm going to salt them quite liberally and give them a little toss. I want all of the surfaces coated in salt. And my apologies, I need a little more salt. Bad chef. Talk about mise en place. Seconds away with the salt. All right. There we go. So I'm dropping in an aerial drop of salt here. And I'm going to toss those potatoes a little bit. Let me move this for a minute. I didn't need that there after all. I'm going to toss the potatoes. And I'm going to get a little more of that salt going. Actually, a pretty good amount of salt. So again, there's a lot of potato there, and we're going to need it. So I think I got enough. I'm going to just kind of work these in, work that salt in. And since those layers are all kind of stuck together, I want to get that salt in between them. So I kind of work those potatoes a little bit around in there. Because if they're stuck together, you know, you're not going to get salt in between them. Just a big enough bowl, barely big enough. And there we go. Okay, this is always a little weird for people, but I'm going to taste a tiny piece of potato just to get a ballpark of where I am with this. It's a little weird, I know. I think it needs another pinch of salt. I'm glad I did that. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to do a little more of that. There's more salt in my cream as well, but not that much. Not enough to compensate. Let me do a little more stirring around here, and it's going in the pan. I need to get this potato in the oven. I've got lots to talk about. I got some more dinner to make. It's a big, big show. There's a little bit of water coming out of these potatoes from the salt that I put on them. Salt draws moisture out of cell walls. Okay, I think I'm pretty salty. Let me get my pan back. And I'm going to start laying out my potatoes in the bottom. Now, some people go around in this perfect pattern. I've never really found that I need to do that unless I'm doing a casserole that I'm going to turn out of the pan. And then I want the bottom that I'm doing now, I want the bottom to look perfect, okay? That's only if I'm turning this out of the pan, and I'm not doing that with this. I'm showing off the top of this casserole, the golden brown gratin that I was talking about. So I don't really feel the need to show much love or design in the center or the bottom of this casserole because no one will ever see the extra time you put in to creating a fancy pattern. All I'm looking for is gaps to be filled, okay? So if I see shingling going on, you might see me like poking potatoes in underneath other potatoes here and there sometimes, right? That's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to just create a tight structure in there. See that end piece of potato? That's a treasure there. I hope I get that part. I like that peel. Treasure. That's treasure. Okay, still cruising around. You know, in the middle, quite frankly, I can get all of my ugly pieces and just lay them in there, right? Nobody's ever going to see this part. And this will save you a ton of time. You don't need every single layer to be all pretty and foofy and beautiful. Just make it tight. Fill the gaps. And it's always going to have some gaps. You can never fill them all. And you can see I have a combination of peeled and unpeeled. And that's kind of a nice option sometimes, you know? Maybe you like the peel, but you don't want that much of it. And I've got a lot of potato. This is going to be feeding me for days. And, you know, if you're unlike me, if you're just cooking this and not talking the whole time through, sometimes you actually go a little faster on me, faster than me. But that's one thing another thing I often talk about though is I don't have any special advantage over you guys other than maybe speed in the kitchen, knife work and things like that. It takes me just as long to bake this thing off as it's going to take you to bake it off, right? It takes me about as long to slice, you know, to assemble this thing as it takes you to assemble it. I don't have any special powers that are going to save me. I'm just taking my ugliest little pieces and throwing them in there and leaving behind some good looking ones because the top, that's where I want a little pattern. These are nice ones. So I've got all my ugly pieces in there. There's an ugly one. You guys get it, right? Smack it down. And now I'll layer in the nice pieces. Start in the beginning, or start in the center, I mean. Layer them on around. And we've got a nice little amount here. There's an ugly piece. I may not make it all the way out to my edges. Quite frankly, you won't see much of a pattern on this once it's done anyway, to be honest, because of all the beautiful golden brown it's going to have. But I think we got a little pattern coming together. I think I'll run out. I'm about 8 potato slices shy of this last round here, I think. Boom, boom. Maybe not. Maybe not. Hide those little ugly ones, little ugly bits. Perfect. Yeah, those are all decent looking potatoes, if I may say. I'm going to press that slightly, but I'm not cramming it. And then what I'm going to do is trade places. Get rid of this. Move this over here. Get a little better. Let me get a little closer here. That'll work. That'll work. So now what I'm going to do is pour my cream over, okay? As I'm doing this, I had garlic cloves in there. I have the thyme and everything. The thyme is actually some good stuff. So here, let me push this aside. What I might do is just strip some of these thyme leaves into my cream here and then pour it over. Let's do that, okay? It's going to be a little bit warm for some people, but you can pull this on out, and I'm going to put it into a dish so that can cool for a moment, and I can handle it. And then I'm going to just pour most of my cream in there, and I'm going to leave a little back. Some of that butter fat kind of just fell on there. And I may just be adding a little bit of milk to this because I don't know if I have enough cream here. I told you I changed my mind on my amount at the last moment. So let me add a little more milk to this. I don't think I have enough liquid now that I look at it. I kind of thought that was the case. When I emptied out that little thing of milk, I didn't get much out of there. And this doesn't have to be hot right now because the flavors are kind of blended with everything. And okay, so I can probably handle those little thyme leaves now. And so this is going to be a little messy, but I just kind of pull on these guys a little bit and the leaves just fall right off into the soup below. Okay, and there goes a bunch of those leaves into my thyme. And that's going to be beautiful on top of this gratin. Now I'm not going to throw that one in a stock pot, believe me. It's all creamy looking and funky. Just getting rinsed off. And let me go ahead and stir that. And I'm really going to kind of clean things up here and get everything in the pan. And I think I probably have enough liquid now. Let's see. I'm pouring it slowly. And you see the thyme leaves coming out. And there's also a few little pieces of garlic. That is an excellent amount. Look at that. Some potatoes are just barely poking out of that. Everything has been moistened lovingly by the cream. I tell you, I say it in every show. People, sometimes I get lucky. Sometimes things just work out. Okay, that is a good amount of stuff. I'm very happy. Okay. Now, let me wipe up a little bit. My OCD is screaming at me. Next thing I want to do is this is going in an oven, but you know, the bottom of this is not very warm. I just, you know, it's just kind of warmish. So I'm just going to give it a little blast of rocket fuel underneath there. I just cranked it, and I want to get this thing up to temp now before I throw it in the oven. Otherwise, it takes 10, 15 minutes for this thing to even start to get warm. I'm going to poke down my garlic cloves. I don't want them on top where they'll burn. So I'm kind of poking them in there. So beautiful to me. Look at those leaves, guys. You are so beautiful. I'm pushing it around so I'm just very gently pushing so that liquid circulates slightly. Spreads the warmth. Again, I'm trying to bring this thing up to temperature before I go into the oven with it. This pan is going to go underneath, and we're also going to cover this guy for the first stages. It's a little bit full for that lid. I think there might be a little spill, but I'm not even going to worry about it. I'll worry about cleaning that up later. Okay? I am blasting this with heat right now, and we're just waiting for that to get in there. We're getting ready to talk about potatoes in general. I'll give you a little potato lecture. I think I will pull this out. These are my sirloin steaks for tonight. Again, from VMillerMeats, grass-fed, grass-finished, grass everything, all their lives. Come from Stemple Creek Ranch out in Marin County. Very, very unique producers. You won't get this beef just anywhere. It's really, really special stuff. And I can't say enough good things about it. I will tell you guys, I'm talking about VMillerMeats, and I'm talking about these guys, Stemple Creek Ranch, that raises the cattle for those guys. I'm talking about this stuff because I believe in what they're doing. I really do think these are excellent, unique food sources that you just won't find anywhere else. And I think it's very, very beneficial to all of us when we support these local food systems like we're doing. California is showing that right now during COVID. So when you see things like, you know, local grass-fed, grass-finished ranchers, producers, they're all around, like Amy Gravish and people like that. When you see those items on menus, purchase those items, try them. They are uniquely different, and you will remember it. Okay, and you will search these things out, and you will tell your friends about it because it really is a different eating experience. I think I just came up to temperature here on my cream. Okay, all of this is nice and warm, so I'm going to move it on over. The stove is off. I'm going to move the lid, and let me get this on a tray, and then lid's going on. I think lid is kind of floating on there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. And we're going to let it go on in. So my oven is at 425 because it rides a little low. I probably went a little too much potato in this guy. I got overzealous. And you'll see this cream. I was talking about how the cream browns. You'll see the cream that spilled out on that pan just now. You'll see that browning before you see anything else. All right, so let me just grab one thing here, there, and I wanted to start talking about potatoes, okay? Sorry about that. Okay, I just had to get a few things together here in the studio, okay? We are at Quarantine Qitchen Live. I haven't even started with the happy hour yet, right? So let me get a little sip of my, I'm drinking a chilled white wine here. I'm going to need another little sip, actually. Let me get another. And it looks like we've got a Gießen Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. This is what I'm always drinking in the summertime. I completely forgot about happy hour for a while there. My apologies, everyone. Okay. I am just getting a little hot in here. The Quarantine Qitchen oven is cranking right along. It's working great. Okay. Here's one of these guys. I hope you're out there with me. I kind of, my new platform, I can't really see who's with me or not. So I'm working on this, but hopefully it's all making sense out on your end. Delicious. Now, we're going to talk about potatoes. When we are talking about potatoes, we're usually talking about two different types of potatoes, okay? And you've seen them in the grocery stores, right? You've seen those russet potatoes, the ones that I was using just now, okay? Kind of brown, okay, mottled skin. It's kind of rough and everything, okay? That's your basic russet. It's your Idaho potato, right? You see it all over the place in like pictures in magazines. Your baked potato pictures are all these guys, right? Russet potatoes. These fit into a category of potato called starchy potatoes, okay? There are other potatoes that are starchy potatoes. Kennebecks are a starchy potato as well. Kennebecks are famous for being the In-N-Out burger French fry potato, okay? That's what they use for that. And they're also really, really good for potato chips. They're excellent for frying, okay? So again, Kennebec and russets, they both fit into a class called starchy potatoes, okay? So remember that. We have other types of potatoes too, and I just got a couple little guys here, you know, around the house. But I got a few red potatoes. You see those all over, sometimes called red bee or red bliss potatoes. I've got these little baby golden potatoes here, you know, they're like little baby Yukon Golds, you know, things like that, sometimes called butterballs when they're real small, depending on the size and everything, okay? So these are a different class of potato that we call waxy potatoes, okay? The waxy potatoes, they're different inside, right? It's a much smoother texture when you cut into these guys. It's much smoother inside. Russets are kind of grainy looking. And these guys are really, really nice for applications where I want to like boil them or something like that, and I want them to hold their shape. That's usually where I use these guys. They'll also, let me set these down before I start dropping them. They'll also work well for that au gratin that we just did, because that's another one of those kind of moist heat applications. They work well for those, okay? So let's keep talking about waxy potatoes, okay? I mentioned the inside, that structure or the interior is very, very smooth, okay? The outside has very, very thin skins, and they're readily edible. It's not like those russets that I really got to scrub, okay? They tend to have, the waxy potatoes tend to have a higher sugar content and a lower starch content, whereas the starchy potatoes tend to have a higher starch content, of course, and a lower sugar content. Okay. When we're looking at the waxies, again, those applications where I want it to hold its shape. So what are some of those applications? Hey, potato salad, right? Potato salad works well with like red potatoes and little gold potatoes and things like that. They work really, really well for that. those roasted potatoes, when you see them in restaurants, oven roasted potatoes, right? You see that all the time. That's another potato. I want it to hold its shape. I don't want it to come out mashed necessarily, unless I do a smashed potato, right? And so waxy potatoes, any preparation where I want it to hold its shape. One caution about the waxy potatoes, we don't want to use them for deep frying. They're not very good for deep frying. And sometimes you'll see like breakfast restaurants using red potatoes for their breakfast potatoes. And I always feel like the russets work so much better for that. They fry awesome, right? But red potatoes, not so much, okay? Let me just turn that off. Sorry, guys. How rude of me. I thought I did that already. Let's see. Now, back to those starchy potatoes like the russets and the Kennebecks. Those have that thicker skin, which is also edible. But like I said, you really, really want to wash that off really, really well. They're a high starch content, as I said, low sugar content. So they're all about starchiness. Think about a baked potato. You cook that thing off and you break it open and you can almost just see those dry, puffy starch granules inside that potato. If you touch that raw potato, it's like little granules stick into your fingers, right? That's what a starchy potato is like. The other guys, the waxies, aren't like this, right? These starchy potatoes, they work really, really well for baking. You know, the waxy potatoes, not so much, you know, not for that type of thing, right? They're also good for frying. As I was saying, the waxy potato is not so great for frying, but these russets, these Kennebecks, they're all awesome for frying. They really, really pick up that golden brown, making potato chips, French fries, you name it, right? And then also the last thing, mashing. Now, these potatoes don't hold their shape, but since they're really, really dry and starchy inside, once they kind of fall apart, we can kind of drain out the water. And what we'll do is we'll cook the moisture out of these potatoes a little bit. I literally put them on the stove, or you can put them in the oven and dry them out for a while. And then you can put all kinds of butter and cream and bad stuff, cheese, you know, whatever you want to work into it. It's really, really good. Starchy potatoes like the russets, the Kennebecks, they work really, really well for frying, for baking, and for making mashed potatoes, okay? The other guys, good for applications where you want to hold the shape. You know, some of them do well with mashing applications too, but, you know, potato salads and things like that are good for those thin-skinned, waxy potatoes, okay? Let me turn the page here. Let's see. So right now I'm just kind of talking a little bit while I'm cooking these potatoes. So I'm going to go through a few different cooking techniques. Okay. I mentioned a baked potato and I was talking about that on another class. I'm looking for a bell pepper as well. I want to start roasting a bell pepper while I'm talking here. So let me show you that. I've done this in another vid. Okay. But I just put my bell pepper on a burner and start roasting it. Okay. And start charring it. Okay. And that's going to be going on while I'm talking to you guys because I want to save a little time. And I think I've shown you guys that before. Okay, I'll show it to you again. Okay. All right. So when we're looking at baked potatoes, we want a certain size of baked potato because usually we're serving several people. So pick potatoes that are of uniform size or you're going to have different cooking times for everybody. Okay. You want to scrub the potatoes really well, as I said. And if you're baking them, you also want to pierce them with a fork or tip of a paring knife or something like that. Because if you don't, you're going to have a little potato blowout here and there, right? Steam has to escape from these things as they're baking. So poke a few holes and you won't have a broken potato when you get done. Okay, it happens occasionally. If you want crispy skins, I oil them up and it gets really crispy on the outside. If you don't, then don't oil them up. Okay. If I oil them, I tend to, like, if consider people eating them, I like to season it up as well, a little salt, pepper on the outside or something like that, right? Let's see, you're going to place them on a baking sheet and bake them about 420 degrees, and depending on the size, until they are done and dry and mealy inside. Okay, you can just feel a baked potato when it's done, and it gives. Okay, it's a little warm, but you can put a towel on there and feel it and know that it's ready to go. I think we all kind of know what a baked potato kind of feels like. I'm always feeling it myself. Okay, let's see. Once they're done, you just keep them warm. What you don't want to do, I should mention, is wrap them in foil. That's not a baked potato. It'll steam inside there. So it's more like a steamed potato. It's not quite the same thing, and you'll never get that crispy skin out of it, okay? Let's see. Next technique are those oven roasted potatoes I'm always talking about. I'm waving this knife around. Let me set this thing down. Let me get a little sip here. Okay, so The next technique is rissoler, and what this means is browned all over. Earlier I was saying gratin means brown on top. Rissoler means browned all over. Before I get into this, let me take a sip and let's take a look at this pepper. Guys, join me, won't you? Ah, delicious, absolutely delicious. I wish I could see you guys out there. So there's side one. See the blackening on there? Okay. It's missing a little spot. I'll pick him up later, but I'm going to set him down on a different side now. You can see the black side is toward us now, and it's got a fresh bottom on the flame. It's snapping, crackling, and popping. I love that sound. And we're back into it. Okay, so rissoler. Also called oven roasted. It's a combination method. When I'm doing a rissoler potato, I tend to pre-cook my potatoes a little bit or blanch them, right? I'll cut my potatoes. I'm usually using those potatoes that I want them to hold their shape. I want those waxy type potatoes, thin skin, very firm grain to them, okay? I want to cut them up into uniform sizes or leave them whole if that's my jam, you know, and I put them into a pot with water, and I don't salt them at this point. I just turn on the water, I bring it up to a boil, and then I just kind of turn it down, to a low simmer, and I just let them, not a low simmer, an aggressive simmer, and I let them cook until they're tender. I'll go in there and jab them with a knife. I don't want the skins to start splitting or anything like that. I'm really just kind of par cooking them. They're not cooked all the way. Once I have part cooked them, I'll take them out, I'll dry them, and then I will toss them with oil, tasty bits, salt, pepper, you know, herb, garlic, whatever I want to kind of work into it. And then I lay them out on an even one layer on a sheet pan, and I put them into a hot oven. Again, we're probably talking, you know, 425, maybe even 450 for this one. Another little trick for this is if you can, take a moment and put all the cut sides of the potato down onto the sheet pan, and they'll really pick up some golden brown when they're in contact with that surface, okay? So get them into that oven and leave them alone for a good, you know, 15 minutes or so. Check them out, and then, you know, if they're getting brown, maybe move them around. If they're not getting brown, let them keep going. Like I was saying, everybody's oven is different. You're just going to keep these guys going at that high heat, 425, maybe even 450, until you get beautiful golden brown all the way around, and that's the name of the game with rissoler. When they come out, if you have any fresh herbs to finish with, toss them in a bowl, hit them with fresh herbs, toss it, and then go ahead and sell it. Okay, it's ready to serve. Okay, and that is your rissoler potato. This is what we see in restaurants, always called oven roasted potatoes. Okay, let me grab my pepper. I'm pulling it right out of the fire. Ooh, he's a little hot. Okay, so there's my second side. He's a little darker. Okay, and now I'm going with my third side, and there it is. You can see the top and side is done now. And we are just cooking up a storm here while we talk about potatoes. I'm going to be checking my casserole here in a little bit. And I'm going to get another refreshing sip here. The next one I want to talk about is the mashed potato. I started to kind of tell you about this process when we're doing a mashed potato. Now, when we're in culinary school, we tend not to teach mashed potato originally. We teach potato puree, just how to get it to the puree stage, right? And so for that, what you're doing is you're peeling your potatoes, you're cutting them down into even pieces and putting them in cold water. Now, I didn't mention this when we did that rissoler a minute ago, but whenever we start potatoes cooking in water, always in cold water. I'm sorry I left that out because that's a very important thing. If I start potatoes in boiling water, the outside's going to be boiling away into loose starch in the pot long before the inside even starts cooking, right? And so we start them in cold water, and everything comes up together, and it cooks much more evenly. Okay, so cold water for your potatoes, for your puree or anything else. Okay. Again, we're talking about potato puree. Once you get those potatoes going in the cold water, you are going to bring them up to a boil and reduce them to an aggressive simmer, okay? Again, you don't want this boiling so hard